My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
Donald Trump is not the first US president whose declared reasons for doing a particular thing may be different from their actual reasons for doing a particular thing. Donald Trump is, however, the first US president of whom it is an open question as to whether he is himself entirely certain why he has embarked upon a given course. Trump is, in politics as in person, a creature of unrestrained id, volatile whim, and extraordinary capacity for grudge-bearing.
All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military working with U.S. law enforcement successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark.
An undervalued motivation for the weekend's raid on Venezuela, which captured President Nicolás Maduro, now supping the gruel of the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, is that Venezuela has long loomed large in Trump's perfervid fantasies of a plot to steal from him the 2020 US presidential election. Late last year, it was plausibly reported that US federal investigators had been instructed to pursue the entirely unevidenced and flatly risible suggestion that Venezuela, a country which can barely keep its own lights on, had somehow tweaked American voting machines in 2020, though presumably decided they couldn't be bothered in 2024. Trump has recently amplified at least one podcast elaborating upon this nonsense.
This is the largest transnational criminal organization in the world that no one knew about or no one wanted to talk about until they stole our election in 2020 and we decided, okay, you want to play hardball? Here we come.
So when considering the most obvious questions raised by Operation Absolute Resolve, why do this, why now, and what happens next, it is entirely possible that the answers, so far as Trump is concerned, are respectively, because I felt like it, because I could, and I don't care. But with all due acknowledgement that Trump may have grown bored with the whole thing by this time next week, after all, who now recalls America's great crusade against Islamist militias in Nigeria, which lasted all of an hour and a quarter of Boxing Day?
We're going to do things to Nigeria that Nigeria is not going to be happy about.
It is worth pondering other possible motivations and consequences. The putative reasons and or legal covers for the seizing of Maduro are the US indictments issued against him some as long ago as 2020 on charges of running drugs and or guns. Maduro may well be guilty of these. He is a monstrous crook, was a dismal tyrant, and none of that is beyond him. But Trump's solemnly avowed ruthlessness towards drug kingpins is difficult to square with his pardoning last month of former President Juan Orlando Hernandez of Honduras, 18 months after a US federal court sentenced him to 45 years for importing 400 tons of cocaine into the US. So, probably not the drugs? There is the unhappy possibility that the US has picked off a relatively easy target by way of rolling the pitch for further such endeavours. In the days since, Trump has mentioned Cuba, Mexico, Colombia and Greenland, and or ushering the world towards a tripolar arrangement in which the US, China and Russia are enjoined to do as they please, so long as they don't trouble each other. Back in 2019, Fiona Hill, an advisor on Russian matters to the US National Security Council during Trump's first term, testified to Congress that Russian President Vladimir Putin had proposed to Trump an effective swap of Venezuela for Ukraine. Or the intention may have been a swift, decisive strike against one adversary with the aim of putting others on notice. Operation Absolute Resolve took place on the 6th anniversary of the American drone strike in Baghdad, also authorized by Trump, which killed the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani, commander of the Quds Force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is just about arguable that this was the beginning of the welcome unravelling of Iran's regional influence since then. It is difficult to make a case that Maduro was a menace of even vaguely comparable magnitude. There is, of course, Venezuela's oil, of which Trump has been unabashedly covetous.
Oil. What are we going to do with the oil that we have?
Going to do with what?
The oil that has been seized. The United States seized 1.9 million barrels of oil on December 10th.
We're going to keep it. We'll keep it.
Where's it going?
But if someone's oil is actually what you want, it is vastly cheaper and easier to buy it than steal it. Added to which, Venezuela's oil is more impressive for its quantity than its quality. While Venezuela's reserves are, by general consensus, the world's largest, the oil itself is heavy and gloopy and requires more processing than most. Establishing the infrastructure necessary to refine and transport it would take years and cost tens of billions, all at a time at which oil prices are low, and everybody, very much including energy companies, if not the US president, understands that fossil fuels are not the future. On top of which, anybody possessed of the wherewithal to invest that much is likely to want a more secure political environment than Venezuela may be able to offer, or the US willing to impose. So whatever President Trump may think, it probably isn't the oil itself, but it might be to stop anyone else having it. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, currently also serving as the administration's voice of relative sanity, we must take what we can get, etc., has this week noted, correctly, that the US has all the oil it needs.
We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States.
However, Rubio elaborated that the US does not want Venezuela's oil controlled by China, Russia, and/or Iran.
Why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil?
Or any of those actually or potentially hostile countries having a base of operations in the United States' backyard. This is not in itself an ignoble aspiration, though possibly something more likely to be realized by the US regarding its neighbors as neighbors rather than pests, threats, and nemeses. Amid the haphazard presidential press conference which followed the Venezuela raid, Trump invoked the Monroe Doctrine, the precept by which the fifth US president asserted American primacy over the entire Western Hemisphere, and under which the US has since staged dozens of overt and covert operations to remove or subvert inconvenient Latin American governments.
All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot.
Although Trump being Trump, it may actually be as simple as the fact that some wags have begun referring to the Donroe Doctrine, a notion irresistible to someone who likes nothing better than having stuff named after him or similar glorifying blandishments. Maduro could have spared himself considerable headache for the price of a red, gold and blue sash with a brooch on it. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Miller.